Okay, so now let's share some housekeeping. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself to minimize sound issues. Make sure you identify yourself, your name, your league, your pronouns when you are asking question or speaking. If you have any question or thought throughout the call, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. A follow-up email will be sent with material highlighted in the call and also with the recording as Eric mentioned before. And the norm for this call, please bring your full self and limit distraction. What is learned here, live here, share what we are going to be learning today. No one knows everything. Together we know a lot. And also take a space and make a space if you know that you tend to take a lot of space, and make sure you make some space for others, and assume that we are making a statement with positive intent, and but also make a statement with caution, to not to harm others. And yeah, so let's jump into the agenda. Today we're going to be learning about the census. What is the census? We're going to be learning where things stand in relation to the census. What is a stake? What is a stake in New Jersey, and what New Jersey must do? And we're going to have some space for question and discussion. So give me some space for taking some water. Sorry, and let's jump right into. So what is the census? So the census is the most important of all the service that you're going to take in your life. It's the nationwide count of every person living in the United States, and it happens every 10 years. And why it exists? Because it is required by the United States Constitution, and it ensures a fair representation in the United States Congress.
Zoom.
It guides how billions in federal funding are distributed in the state. The census essentially is the foundation of our democracy and how resources are allocated. And where the money goes. So the money goes to healthcare. The money fund Medicaid and Medicare. The money also fund education, housing, infrastructure, economic development, and social services. Census data touches every major system that people rely on every day in our state. So today, where things stand right now. So although we don't see it every day, the Census Bureau work every day in the census through the year, throughout the 10 years that the census is not working. However, right now, the census is facing challenges. And those challenges means that the census has lost more than 1,300 of their census staff. Also, they have seen funding cuts that have weakening their operation. And they have also seen an ongoing threat of a citizenship question. And Eric is going to talk more about the citizen question and these threats later on in the presentation. and they are also immigration. This question, along with the immigration policy that we are seeing with this current administration, is eroding the trust that people are going to have when answering the question, enumerators during the question during the census in 2030. Another challenge that we are seeing is that the 2026 census test that is happening now is scaling back. So the census has fewer locations. Initially, the census test has 6 locations. They reduce it to 2 locations, and less diversity. And also the test now is only in English. And there used to be more languages. Also, Eric is going to talk more about those locations and those changes in the test. So those challenges are going to change how the census is going to is how the count is going to take place here in New Jersey, and in the whole country, but essentially here in New Jersey as a diverse as we are. So who is going to be more affected to be undercounted here in New Jersey? Again, as diverse as we are, immigrant and mixed status household, because if we ended up having as immigration um, as citizenship question, those mixed status household are going to be hesitant to answer, and immigrant families, renter are going to be also hesitant, are going to be with the difficulty in funding renter low income community are hard to reach. So with low resources in the bureau, they are hard to reach, so they are hard to count. So they can be undercount. Also, non-English speaker, urban community, young children, they are always in the hard to count community. Children under 5, always, like I remember in 2020, don't forget the children under 5, don't forget the baby. It was one of the slogan. People with disability, people experiencing homelessness. So community who needs the most to be counted are the one who be the most at risk to be undercounted. So what is at stake for New Jersey? New Jersey is the most diverse, one of the most diverse state in the nation. Again, so our population is growing slowly, but it's growing, and we have to make sure we count this growth in 2030. Our neighboring states are projected to lose seats. Our margin is now routine. We are not projected to lose seat, but it's now routine. And the federal challenge, the fear of the immigrant community, and we have a risk. So we have to take into consideration to start early. So we have to invest in the census. In 2030, the investment start too early. In trust in the community take years, and we have to start now. And now I'm going to pass to Eric.
Thank you, Calandria. Thank you for explaining that. Why this matters, what's at stake for New Jersey. Like you mentioned, there are a lot of growing threats at the federal level that aim to suppress the count in states like New Jersey, right? Over now, I think it's over 1,500 people have been laid off from the Census Bureau, so their capacity is very, very low. And it along with efforts to add a citizenship question to the census, to the decennial census in 2030, both through the courts and through Congress. And so we know that that's an effort that they were pushing for very strong in 2020, and it has come back again. And so it's something that we have to be really thinking about to ensure that if that does happen, we are prepared to answer that, and um, we'll be, monitoring everything that is happening federally to fight back and push back against those challenges. But now that we discussed why this matters and what's at stake, I can share a little bit about where we are in the census timeline. So like Calandra mentioned, the census is preparing for the 2030 census through what is known as a 2026 test. So right now, the Census Bureau is conducting tests across the country. This test is meant to evaluate how operations will function, how people will respond, and whether the Bureau systems are ready for 2030. So usually this test happens across the country in different areas that include geographic diversity, that include different types of like housing structures, like that include cities and colleges, and it's supposed to include like how communities that reflect the country. What we're seeing right now is that this test has been scaled back completely. There were six original sites uh, to be tested for census preparation efforts, and now it's only happening in two locations. So the only places that are conducting the census test, which is essentially a dress rehearsal for 2030, include two states. So it's Alabama and South Carolina. They're not really diverse in population of what the United States represents, and so we know that there is very little efforts there to find the best systems, the best methodologies, the best practices to lead on to 2030. And so during this phase, the Bureau is reviewing several key things: how people respond to outreach efforts, how field operations perform, what kind of new efficiencies or cost saving strategies can be implemented. And while the test is important, many advocates across the country in the league were very concerned because this is happening in fewer places with less diversity. And this means states like New Jersey, with dense cities, immigrants, renters, and multilingual communities, may not be adequately reflected in those tests. Um, and so this is why New Jersey cannot like depend on the federal government or wait for the federal government to solve all the issues, and we must begin to prepare now to ensure that we are thinking of best strategies to ensure that everybody is counted here in New Jersey. In the 2020 census, like Landra mentioned, we started working around 2018, 2019, but it was a little bit too late to begin doing some of that work. There were still major undercounts in many parts of the state, including New Jersey's urban cities, including Patterson, Newark, Elizabeth, which only had about 50% response rate. Can you go to the next slide, Calandra? Um, so looking ahead, another major milestone after the 2026 test is the local update of census addresses, also known as LUCA. So that's something that Kalandra and I have been working very closely with our partners in coalition to begin encouraging the state to participate in LUCA. So between 2026 and 2027, there's a preparation phase focused on planning, gathering data, and coordinating between local and county governments around list of addresses. So the Luca phase is essentially when the federal government um, conducts outreach to all the local governments, counties, and municipalities to share their databases on list of addresses that exist. And so the reason why they collect all those addresses is because that's how the Census Bureau knows who to contact and who to send a census form for them to fill out. And if your address is not on that master data list that the Census Bureau has, you will not be counted and you will not get any outreach done by the Census Bureau. And this matters because before you count people, you need to know where they live, right? And they need to know where that information is going to go and how to target people, how to do follow up. And so that is coming up in 2027. And New Jersey has not conducted robust or comprehensive LUCA preparation efforts. It is optional. So the federal government does not provide any grants or support for local municipalities to participate in the local update of census addresses. So that is often led up to those entities to either do it or don't do it. And so a lot of addresses do get missed from LUCA. Um, and so that starts in 2027. Right now, the league and other partners are advocating for the state to appropriate funding to begin hiring dedicated staff that will work with local and county governments to encourage those municipalities to participate in the local update of census addresses. And there have been many case studies across the country in which um, many addresses have been added because of strong LUCA efforts, particularly in urban areas. Where often not complicated, but just non-traditional housing is 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 um, is available in those parts. Like somebody might convert a two-family home. Um, I mean, their home into a two-family home, and now that's a new address that's being added to it. Or their garage, they turn their garage into like a second home or something like that. Because there are different rules and regulations that are changing by different jurisdictions that exist around housing, and so those addresses need to be counted. So that's Luca. It's going to be very important starting in 2027. Um, and then we can go to the next slide. And so by 2027, I'm sorry, by 2029, we enter the final preparation phase. And so the Census Bureau will then release Luca feedback, allowed appeals and changes to the National Master Address List. This list determines again where the census forms are mailed, where outreach happens, and where door knockers go, the census enumerators that sometimes will follow up for communities that have not responded to the census. At the same time, in 2029, the federal government will be finalizing operations, launching a national outreach campaigns, hiring and training temporary workers, census enumerators, and then we finally get to 2030. Um, and April 1st, 2030 is Census Day and is the official reference point for counting everybody living in the United States. And by then, most of the important work will already have been decided. And that's why early preparation is really important because by the time we get to 2030, everything that we could have done should have already been done by then to ensure a full count. You can go to the next slide, Calandra. Um, so what must New Jersey do? So what New Jersey must do now is essentially like I mentioned, begin preparing for the local update of census addresses, which the state has not done in a coordinated effort before. In 2010, the state did very little to really conduct a strong census uh, campaign effort, and we lost a seat in Congress. We went from 13 seats to 12 seats. In 2020, advocates like the League and other organizations got together to begin planning for census and advocating for funding to ensure that we were doing something for it. But we got started in 2019. 2018, we started talking about it. legislation was introduced that would establish a statewide complete count commission that would develop a statewide plan on how to conduct census outreach. But that wasn't implemented late until 2019, which by the time it was a little bit too late to do a lot of the infrastructure building. And then we got to 2020, which was a COVID year, and which was very difficult to conduct census. But one of the things that was very helpful is that it was the first time that the census was made available online, and so that was able to get a lot of responses for folks. And there was also an extension because of the COVID-19 pandemic that allowed for advocates and different organizations on the ground to do more outreach. There was also some funding that was appropriated um, to conduct marketing campaigns, outreach, but it was very little compared to what other states had invested in 2020. So right now we are in 2026, and we are beginning to encourage the state to begin planning for the census preparations, which includes, like I mentioned, the local update of census addresses that it starts next year. That essentially, that will allow the census on to know who to send a form to and how to do outreach. We're also encouraging the state to reactivate the Complete Count Commission that was activated in 2020 to begin talking about strategies and to begin developing a plan and a timeline of how things are going to be rolled out for that. That Complete Count Commission was activated in 2019, so we want to start it earlier so we can begin planning more thoughtfully how we should be um, implementing this new effort, as well as creating dedicated staff in the State Department. There is no dedicated staff in the State Department that leads this coordination, and so we would like to see Office of Census Services in the State Department that can coordinate between um, organizations on the ground, this regional Census Bureau, the state, the Complete Count Commission, because there's a lot of coordination that needs to happen, and it needs to fall under, a group of a team, a dedicated team to be able to carry this work out. And so those are things that the state can begin to do now uh, to prepare for that. And all of this costs money. It's it's not free. It's time, resources, and money. And so what the league and other partners have begun to do is begin to advocate for the state to appropriate $5 million to in this year's budget to begin hiring the dedicated staff that will be leading this work that so they can hire a director of census services, a coordinator, and different folks that will be able to do that. Um, okay, which slide am I on now, Calandra? Sorry, can you go back to the one that I was at? Yes. So that's what we essentially want the state to do. You can go to the next one. Sorry. Uh, Again, Luca is very important. I already mentioned it. I think I might have mentioned all the things in these other slides, but I'll just go over it briefly. It's a federally recognized program that allows state, local, and tribal governments to review and improve the Census Bureau master list before the census begins. And it matters because if an address is missing, outdated, or incorrect, the people living there may never receive census materials. So that's why it's important to be able to participate in Luca. This is especially important in places with new housing developments, apartment conversions, multifamily homes, informal housing arrangements, and rapidly changing communities. And so New Jersey tends to fall in all those categories. We're a very densely populated small state, in which we have very complex housing in our states. And so participating in Luca is absolutely critical for census preparations. And so um, we would like for the state to really take this on and lead this work because there are many efforts, like Calandra mentioned, at the federal government that are aiming to suppress the count in states like New Jersey, where we are very diverse in ethnicity, in language diversity, in a lot of things. You can go to the next slide. I already talked a little bit about the Complete Count Commission, and the Complete Count Commission needs to be established through legislation ahead of the last census to promote full participation statewide. It tends to include representatives from government agencies, community organizations, and other key stakeholders from different departments. And it's chaired by the Secretary of State, and hears concerns from communities and develops a statewide strategy. And that infrastructure really matters because often the census is too large and important for, agencies to work in silos and do it independently. It needs to be broad collaboration between all the different stakeholders to get everybody counted. And so that's why reactivating the Complete Count Commission should be a top priority for the state now. You can go to the next slide. Um, I already mentioned the Office of Census Services, which would serve as a central hub for statewide census strategy, coordinate community outreach, administer grants, because we would like some of those state funding to go to on-the-ground organizations that will be conducting the canvassing, because a lot of folks will be very hesitant to fill out a census form, especially the way the federal government has been. Um, Cross-sharing data across different agencies for immigration enforcement for different things, right? We're seeing the IRS begin to share very sensitive financial information about immigrant communities to ICE, right? For many, many years, the US government promised people that, if you filed your taxes and as an undocumented person using an ITIN number and there was ever an immigration reform, you would be at the top of the priority list because you would be on good standing with the federal government. Now that information is being used to go after people. And so there is a lot of distrust in government. And if you have a census enumerator come to your door and asking you all these questions, which are general, but still, somebody with census and US government insignia and like with an iPad and very coming from the federal government to you're going to be very hesitant to many communities will be very hesitant to fill out that census form. And so that's why it's really important uh to be able to build all these relationships now with communities on the ground. And so the state is going to be we're asking for the state to also appropriate money to be able to grant to organizations on the ground to do some of that canvassing and underground outreach. And really the census only happens once in a decade and it locks us in for the next 10 years. So and if there's an undercount, we will be losing money for the next 10 years and we could lose representation for the next 10 years. You can go to the next slide. So I already mentioned a little bit about trusted messengers, right? And why it's important to build trust now. Alongside government infrastructure, we also need power people, and we know many residents are more likely to respond when information comes from somebody that they trust. That could be a local faith leader, a teacher, a librarian, a neighborhood nonprofit that provides services to them, a community food bank, a community health worker, local elected officials, and a civic group like the League of Women Voters. And that's why also cities and counties should be supported in creating complete count committees in their own local municipalities, like in Newark, in Patterson, in Teaneck, and Hackensack, to have their own complete count committees to be able to do outreach together. And these committees can bring together government leaders, schools, nonprofits, and service providers, and be trusted messengers and lead the outreach to increase participation in those communities. And so that coordination needs to begin happening now, along with everything else that's happening with Luca in 2027, with reactivation of the Complete Count Commission, as well as beginning to appropriate money for some of these grants that will be given to these Complete Count Commissions and these grassroots organizations. You can go to the next slide. So while there's real challenges ahead, there's also a lot of opportunity, right? New Jersey has the chance to act early now, build strong infrastructure, and ensure every community is fully counted and represented. And if we do this right, we can protect billions in federal funding that we get. In 2023 alone, we received over $65 billion from the federal government, both um, direct through our budget and indirectly through different programs that folks may qualify for from government services. And this really strengthens our democracy and it really ensure that no community less is left behind and that we have everybody counted. New Jersey is fully represented in Congress. You can go to the next slide. So right now, like I mentioned, we are currently going through the state budget process, and there's an opportunity for the state to begin appropriating in money and putting money aside to begin working on Census 2030. And so the league is advocating for initial seed money that will assist local governments with the local update of census addresses phase that begins in 2027, developing statewide outreach and education infrastructure, establishing a census office, or hiring census dedicated staff that will focus on census coordination, and beginning to reactivate the state's complete count commission. And so we need this money to fund all of those things that we mentioned. And so we are working very hard to make sure that this becomes a priority in a very tough budget year with many things are being there are many competing priorities and many things are being cut from the budget. And so we are asking folks to contact their state representatives, senators, assembly members to make sure that this becomes a priority for them too. And when final negotiations are happening in the state legislature between leadership and in their caucuses, the census preparations is one of them that they take into account. You can go to the next slide. And so Calandria will put the link in the chat for a take action link in which you can all participate in sending a letter that is already pre-written on the. Sorry, Calandria, were you going to say something?
I don't have the link right now with me.
Okay,
So
I'll
I
put
think
it,
you
I'll
have
put
it,
it. I have
Closer.
it. Yes,
Perfect.
I'll
Eric
put
will.
it.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, so I'll put the link in the chat. And I think it'd be great if everybody can
Please, thank
fill that
you.
out now or a later point to ensure that the we're doing everything in our power to prepare for the census. Um, One of the things that I wanted to also mention is that I think that maybe I didn't mention or we didn't mention is that current projections, like Calandra did mention, is show that our neighboring states are likely to lose congressional representation. New York is on track to losing two seats because of population shifts. Pennsylvania won. We are okay because there has been a lot of growth over the last few years among immigrant communities. So a census report that was released this year estimated that there was a big increase in foreign-born people coming into the state. But what we're seeing now is that is changing across the country with the way immigration enforcement has been happening. Is that there has been more of a national decline in immigration across the country, and so people are now um, coming less numbers to the United States, and more people are leaving the United States because of how anti-immigrant policies are being implemented in across the country, and many people are self many immigrants who have been here are self-deporting and because of the harmful immigration policies. And so, while New Jersey has some growth in population, it is very likely that that growth will change very quickly in the next 2 or 3 years. And so we may be okay right now, but in 2028, 2029, we may not. And so we need to ensure that one, we're building trust with communities, we're ensuring that we can be as accessible and inclusive as we can as we're doing this census outreach campaigns, and ensure that the state think about the responsibility in ensuring that because at the end of the day, this is all tied to funding, the way we get dollars to the state, and the representation and the voice that New Jersey has in Washington. Um, and the very interesting thing about this is when seats are um, divided up in Congress uh, during the apportionment process, the margins are very thin, like Calandra mentioned. So last time New York City was forecasted in 2020 to lose two seats again, they only lost one, but they were able to save one. But the second seat that the seat that they did lose was only because 89 people were not counted, were missing to get the next congressional seat. And so, the margins are very small in the way that the seats are given at that final process. New York did invest a lot of money into their census efforts. They invested around $100 million for census activities, 60 million from the state and 40 million from New York City. Cool. And now let me look for this link. Uh, you can go to the next slide too, Calandra. Okay, I think that's it then.
Yeah.
So I'll put the link in the chat, and it'd be great if everybody could fill this census take action page, and which we
Yes.
want to make sure that this becomes a priority for lawmakers in Trenton to begin planning and thinking about census preparations. And now I think we can open it up for questions.
Question. We have a question already from Hildy in the chat about the questionnaire for the census, if it's going to be digital or in paper. And so far it's going to be digital, but this is one of the answers that they're gonna get from the test that they are running now. How many people are going to still need in paper because of access to internet, access to tablets or computer and stuff like that. But so far, because of 2020, when it was completely online, they're gonna still doing it online.
Yes, so I think it'll be mostly online, but there'll be as well, like you mentioned, do that outreach through mail as well. And one of the interesting things that they're doing this year that I forgot to mention around the 2026 testing phase is that we're using postal workers instead of census enumerators to carry out this work, which has raised a lot of concerns for us because there have been studies in the past that this tends not to work very well when postal workers are the ones doing the census outreach.
That's a good
I see another question. Will there be a social media PR campaign to educate people about the importance of census and answering question? Yeah, there will be. And as we get closer to 2028, 2029, we'll begin to roll out those campaigns. And that's why we want the state to appropriate money now, because what we've seen is that the state budget has been facing a lot of cuts and asking for money becomes challenging. And so we also want to make sure that we are incrementally asking for this amount of money over the next 3, 4 years. And it's not all asked at once where we're asking for $40 million and we're putting money aside now um, for this campaign. And so we will begin to see more of the marketing and education as we get closer to 2028 for that. Uh, Other question, how do we build trust when there's a real risk of detention for immigrants that share their addresses? And that's a very important question because it's how can we guarantee people that their information is not going to be used against them at a later point, like it has been with all these other programs that people are applying to? And I think the the not so great answer is that in many ways they already have all of our informations. The government or can access people's informations in many ways. And so their goal is really to suppress the count and to have that fear. So they're not filling out that census form because the census is a powerful tool that gives people a voice in Congress, that gives people resources and money for all of these programs. And so if we go to that mindset of things, we're falling into that uh, into what they essentially want people to do, to not fill out the census form. And so in many ways, we really can't guarantee that, but it is very likely that they already have everybody's information in the way
Yeah.
that data is collected
I think the messaging on that
across
is going to be
different
key. We're going to
um,
need messaging to those points because
mhm.
it's a real worry. You know, every time you share your address, you're putting yourself at more risk because that list may get pulled. And so building that
Uh,
trust is going to be really important.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And so that's why we're starting now to begin up and develop a lot of relationships in all parts of the state. And the league is very proud to be spearheading this effort with many partners to begin building those relationships across the state in the rural parts of the state, from in the rural parts of the state to the urban cities and all of these parts where there are hard to reach communities. And build relationships with people that they trust, with their local governments, with their libraries, with faith leaders, with food pantries, with all of these different organizations to ensure that we get a full count. And then can this link be sent to local chapters to encourage members to contact their legislator? Yes, this link can be sent to anybody. It's publicly. The more people we have to that can share this link, the better. We really want to ensure that this becomes a priority for leadership. Right now, there are many things happening both nationally and at the state level, where many harmful policies are happening that is taking people's attention, and many people are not paying attention to the census. Um, but it should be a priority. It's what's fiscally responsible to do, right? It's a investment that we're making now on our future, on the fundings that we will get, on the representation that we will have in Congress. Um, and so we want to make sure that this is not it's not on the back burner of things, but it's a priority for everybody. Eileen, I think you have your hand up.
Hi, do we know for a fact how many communities, again, all 536 actually had complete count committees
I don't have
last
that
count?
information. No, I don't.
Okay.
We can look into it.
All right. Well,
It-
Fairlawn had one, and we participated, and it was good to see the efforts that were being made because what we wanted to do is the committee was made of people that represented the diversity of the community, so that yes, we're going through churches and pantries and all these safe things. But I also wanted to know, do they get an online request first and then it follows up with a door knock, or what is the normal procedure, or do we not know how it's going to run this year? I mean, in 30.
That's what we're trying to find out. Oh, sorry, Calandra, you can go ahead.
and they get they normally they get like an invitation that you get an invitation to respond to the census. If you don't respond to that invitation, then you get like somebody an enumerator to your house.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, and what they're doing right now is on the with the testing, the 2026 testing, it's supposed to be what practices they will be doing to implement in 2030. What's the best way to do that outreach? Digital outreach has made things a lot easier, and so I'm sure there'll be a combination of both.
Yeah.
In 2020, New Jersey had a 70% response rate, but 30% of the people in the state needed additional follow-up. And once we get that,
Right.
yeah, and once we get that 30% off into, once we
Hmm.
look into the 30%, it becomes more complicated on how much people outreach
Right.
people are going to need.
Well, not every town has a library, but the library can also help facilitate people who don't have computer access, so they can take their invitation and fill it out at the
Hmm.
library. So these are some of the extra things that could
Yeah.
be added. My last question is do we know where Mikey Sherrill is on this?
That's a that's a great question.
Okay.
Um, and the Lieutenant Governor Dale Caldwell testified before the Assembly Budget Committee and the Senate Budget Committee this month. And his responses weren't very promising or great. They sounded like this is not a priority for them. We have done uh, a lot of outreach and education to a lot of lawmakers, to those offices, and it's been um, somewhat hard to get a clear answer. I'll tell you that in 2020, while we did have some successes, there were a lot of gaps that were missing and that need to be improved on. I think the state thinks that 2020 is the best that we can do, and that's what they're hoping for. I don't think they're thinking about all the other things that are happening. What's happening with the citizenship question, with what's happening with the low capacity that the Census Bureau has. When the Department of Government Efficiency came in, they laid off a lot of staff, forced a lot of people to retire. The Census Bureau is practically gutted. Um, they are beginning to install regional offices across the country, but they're very low capacity right now, and so it really puts a strain on how things are gonna unfold.
Yeah, I
Uh,
also think that regardless of all the obstacles, the way to get the people's attention is to go where the money is. Tell people you will lose money. You will lose money, and that we
yeah,
have lost money. And that gets people angry when they think something's going to be taken away from them. And they're like, wait, I need to be counted because my town needs, my state needs, and
yeah,
I think that in the talking points that you might put forward, that that's a critical way to engage people. It has to be a little bit scary, you know?
yeah. It
Because
is, and
already, because already New Jersey taxes, um, we pay more than,
You
we're helping.
receive less.
yeah, we send more money into the federal government than we get
Thank you.
back.
Yeah, you said it
And
right.
yeah, yeah, and we do, and um, that's essentially what it is. The messaging that we're doing, right? The money that we
Yeah.
get, the billions of dollars that we get, and the political representation that
And the
we
seat that we
get.
may lose too.
Because, like I mentioned, the margins are very, very small for us losing a seat. New York is very likely to lose a seat. They're already starting. Governor Hochul proposed creating a census office, like a census office in at the state government. They're already putting money into their budget. I think last time I saw was something around $15 million to begin some of this initial funding. They are doing a lot of things because New York lost a seat in 2020 and did a poor job in coordinating and getting those money out. Arkansas had major undercounts in 2020 as well. They're already beginning. So a lot of the states that lost representation or lost funding are the ones leading a lot of these efforts to get things going in their own state. And so the thing that worries me about this is that New Jersey only did well in 2020 because a lot of organizations like the League of Women Voters stepped up, like the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, AAPI New Jersey. A lot of organizations stepped up to make sure that everybody got counted. And um, and didn't receive a lot of funding for this. Last time, New Jersey only appropriated $9 million dollars for census outreach. It was $9 million because that was New Jersey's population, 9 million point something, so a dollar per person. That was nothing. That was nothing, and the money got appropriated too late into the cycle needed for the census. Um, and so while the 2020 had some successes, there were a lot of other factors that helped ensure that there was a somewhat of a complete count, which they should not be expecting again to that because that's their job. That's the government's job to do, the state government's job to do, and so we are doing our job to encourage them to take action on this now. I'm sure there are a lot of different there are a lot of different competing priorities on. They're thinking about like all these attacks on democracy that are happening. But this is something that the current administration is working very, very hard behind the scenes to suppress the count. So states like New Jersey could lose representation and we can lose funding because what? They're lean Democratic for the most part. And so that's sort of what we are leading about the resources that we get and the political representation that we get. Susan?
Yeah, I think one thing I think is important is the education of the electorate of the population and letting them know that when you get this in the email, online, don't be afraid, it's not fraud, because there's so much fraud out there. We have to alert people how to look at something. In fact, I called a local place because I want to renew my passport. And she said, well, go to this website. I said, yeah, I'm always afraid that I'm on the wrong website. So she told me exactly how to know I'm on the right website. I
Yeah.
think we got to be very specific with people and educate them to say, this is what you're going to get, and this is what it should look like. If it looks different, call this number, or have the league have a hotline, have the other or coalition put together stuff. So we really need to get that education out there now.
And that's
As
what
soon
we
as we
need
know
funding.
as soon as we know what things are going to look like,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, that's very important.
and that's we
Yeah,
need
there's
the funding. You're absolutely right. I'm already sending my note, but I have another Zoom at 7, so thank you so much for this.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Susan. Yeah. And I know we're coming close to time, so if there are any other last questions or folks have any other um, things that they would like to mention, we can stay on a little longer too. But if not, then I hope this was helpful. Um, like I
Yeah,
mentioned,
I
we're
just,
already
Eric, I just wanted to chat and had him write a paragraph for me to send to my members with the link, okay? So, they summarize the problems and why we need to go forward, and it's probably extracting it from some of the letter. But rather than extracting the letter, I let chat do it. So I just reread it. It's pretty good. So I'm sending it to my members to get them to fill out the form, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
and this is New Jersey's budget process is very obscure, and we need everybody to understand that legislators, leadership to understand that this is a priority for them, and this becomes at the top of the list. And so I think this is what we're doing right now at the league, right? Building coalition, building partnerships with different organizations, and educating state leaders to begin preparing for this because this has consequences for the next 10 years. And once we're locked in, we're locked in. Either we're
But
going to be losing money for
also,
the next 10 years
you also,
and
Eric,
representation.
yeah, Eric, we probably represent here in this group at least 10 different towns, if not more.
Yeah.
I've already written twice to my town. Now I'm writing directly to my assembly person because she's a friend and to the manager of my town and ask them about Luca and ask them about the complete count committee. So I wrote them already and I didn't get any answers. So this is probably very far
Yeah.
back on their burners right now, you know?
It is very far back on their burners right now, and so that's what we need to ensure that they prepare for Luca. And the towns that usually tend to prepare for Luca are the towns that receive direct federal funding for specific projects because they understand the importance and why they're getting that funding from for those specific programs.
Yeah.
Um, and so as we continue to build this campaign on, you're going to get more information about Luca Outreach and how we can coordinate. We're going to be coordinating with the Association of Counties, the League of Municipalities, the Urban Majors Associations, because they're the ones that are going to be have to have these conversations to ensure that they are participating in Luca and ensuring that every single address in their district or the area they represent, it is counted. So stay tuned for more of that information because we will send out more information on specific Luca work. But I know folks have to jump off. It's 7. I really appreciate everybody joining the call, and I hope this was helpful. If anybody has any questions around census, you can reach out to me and Calandria. We'll put our information in the chat.
Thank you very much.